Hey everyone! Today we're jumping into a really cool tool in the English language, the second conditional. This is basically the grammar you use for all your daydreams, your what-ifs, and your wildest imagination. So, let's get right into it and see how it works. Okay, before we dive into any rules, let's just imagine something for a second. What would you do if you had wings? I'm serious, really think about it. Would you fly to the grocery store? Visit friends in other countries? This very question, well, it's a perfect example of what we're going to talk about today. Yeah, a question like that just transports you, right? To, well, an impossible world. And that's exactly where we're going to start. By exploring the grammar that powers all those daydreams and what-if scenarios we all have. The most important thing to get is that this isn't for your real-life everyday plans. Nope. This is for exploring those other realities. Think of it like a key that unlocks hypothetical situations, things that are totally impossible or just very, very unlikely to happen. All right, so when do you actually pull this out and use it? Let's get into the specifics. We're going to look at the basic rules of imagination, so to speak, and see where this grammar fits in perfectly. So here's the official textbook definition for you. The second conditional describes the result of a situation that's imaginary or super unlikely, either right now or sometime in the future. It's basically a cause and effect structure for things that aren't real, at least not yet. And what's really interesting is the range it covers. On one hand, you've got things that are very improbable, like there's a tiny, tiny chance it could happen. Think, if I became famous. It's not likely, but hey, you never know. And then you have the completely unrealistic stuff, pure fantasy, like if I had wings. Understanding that difference shows you just how flexible this grammar really is. Okay, so we know what it's for. But how do we actually put one of these sentences together? Let's get practical and look at the simple formula for building your own daydreams. And believe it or not, the formula is super simple. It's just two parts. You've got the if part, which uses the past simple tense, and then you've got the result part, which uses would or wouldn't plus a verb. It's really just, if this happened, then that would happen. That's it. Let's look at a real example. If I lived by the sea, I would swim every day. See how that fits the formula perfectly? If I lived, that's our past simple, I would swim, that's our result. It just paints this really clear picture of an imaginary life, doesn't it? And here's a cool trick. You can totally flip it around. I would swim every day if I lived by the sea. The meaning is exactly the same. The only little difference is that when the if part comes second, you don't need a comma. It's a nice way to mix up your sentences and make them flow a little better. Now, the formula isn't completely rigid. Sometimes would just doesn't feel quite right. What if you want to talk about having the ability to do something or the possibility of it in your imaginary world? Well, that's where could comes in. It's a simple swap, but it adds a whole new layer of meaning. For example, if I spoke Japanese, I could live in Tokyo. It's not saying I would definitely live there. It's saying I would have the ability to. The option was there. See how could just opens up the possibilities within that daydream? It's a great little tweak. Okay, quick detour for a very important special rule. This is a pro tip. When you're using the verb to be in that if part of the sentence, the most correct and formal choice is always were, for everyone. If I were, if you were, if he were, if she were. Now, you'll definitely hear people say was in casual conversation, but using were just sounds a bit more polished. So take a look at this. If she were the teacher, the lessons would be easier. Using were instead of was just signals a little more strongly that this is a hypothetical, imaginary situation. It really leans into the what-if vibe. All right, so we've talked about wings and winning the lottery, but the second conditional actually has a secret identity. It's got a surprisingly practical, real-world use that has nothing to do with daydreams. It can be an amazing tool for being polite. No, really, this is a fantastic social hack. We use this exact same imaginary grammar to soften our requests. It makes them sound way less demanding. What you're doing is creating a little bit of hypothetical distance, which is a really smart social skill. So, instead of being really direct and saying, "Can I borrow your notes?" you can soften it to, "Would it be okay if I borrowed your notes?" See the structure? Or, "Would you mind if we opened the window?" You're framing the request like it's a hypothetical idea, which makes it much easier for someone to say yes to. So we've gone through the what, the when, and the how. Now for the final, and honestly the most important step. This is where I hand it over to you. It's your turn to take all this and start imagining. Because look, watching this is a great start, but real confidence comes from actually doing it. The absolute best way to master the second conditional is to start creating your own sentences. Think about your own daydreams, your own wishes. What are your personal what-ifs? And let's end with one to get you going right now. If you could go back and give your past self just one piece of advice, what would it be? Take a second and think about it. The answer you just came up with in your head, that's a perfect second conditional sentence. Thanks for tuning in.